The story follows a woman who works as a quick travel tasker, someone tasked with jumping between various lives to complete specific missions. The voice she had just heard was that of her system assistant, Xiao Qi, who aided her in these assignments. She revealed that an accident in her original world had left her in a coma, and her only hope of waking up was to accumulate 1 billion points by successfully completing tasks across multiple dimensions. This was her driving motivation. Achieving that point goal would allow her to finally wake up. Curious about her latest mission, the woman inquired about the role she would be taking on. Xiao Qi briefed her, recounting the tragic story of the original host named Xu Yang in this world. This woman had been deeply in love with her husband, Fu Tingchuan, but despite achieving her dream of marriage, he had treated her with utter indifference, which had plunged her into depression. The arrival of Fu Tingchuan's mistress had only intensified her despair, leading her to take her own life. The assistant lamented that the poor girl had given her all to people who didn't deserve her devotion. When Xu Yang asked what her objective would be, Xiao Qi responded that her task was to make Fu Tingchuan regret his actions and to help the host find someone capable of truly loving and cherishing her. Completing this mission would grant her 1 million points, inching her closer to her ultimate goal. As she acquaints herself with the details of this new life, Fu Tingchuan immediately asks her for a divorce. To him, their marriage has been a burdensome obligation he's ready to dissolve so he can fully commit to a vibrant new relationship with his mistress. With cold nonchalance, Fu Tingchuan even blames their separation on the absence of a child after a year of marriage, punctuating his detachment by flicking ash from his cigarette. The woman, inhabiting Xu Yang's body, responds with a wry smile and a flash of disdain. After a year of marriage, Fu Tingchuan had never even touched the original host, and now he was using such a pretense to make room for his lover. She thought to herself that shameless didn't even begin to describe it. She mocked his insensitivity, remarking that having a child on her own would be quite the challenge. Xu Yang then asked him what she would receive if she agreed to the divorce. With irritation plain on his face, Fu Tingchuan offered her the Beicheng apartment as part of the alimony, along with 3 million in cash, warning her not to be greedy. Xu Yang simply raised a hand, insisting that he bring her the paperwork so she could sign immediately. Fu Tingchuan appeared taken aback. He had expected her to be heartbroken, given her years of apparent devotion and hidden affection for him. However, he quickly dismissed Xu Yang's calm acceptance of the divorce with indifference, thinking that her lack of resistance would only make things easier for him. He looked forward to making his relationship with his lover official and told Xu Yang that they would finalize the divorce at the Civil Affairs Bureau the following week before leaving, likely eager to share this good news with that mistress, Jianing. Now he could finally offer her a legitimate place in his life. Watching her soon-to-be ex-husband walk away, Xu Yang doesn't feel any sadness or triumph. Her long experience with life missions like these has numbed her emotions, and she's already focused on the next step. Xiao Qi, her system assistant, promptly inquired about her plans, and Xu Yang responded with a determined smile. Her first move, she decided, would be to relocate and refresh her wardrobe, all in preparation for meeting Fu Tingchuan's beloved little darling. She wasn't about to let either of them off so easily. As night descended, Xu Yang prepared herself and set off for the nightlight club. Xiao Qi informed her that access to the VIP-only club would require a temporary membership, purchasable with her points. Xu Yang, however, was unwilling to waste her hard-earned 900,000 points on entry. Confident she'd find another way in, she sauntered over to the open-air parking area, scoping out an opportunity. Just then, a sleek black Maybach rolled up at the entrance. Recognizing her chance, Xu Yang's lips curled into a sly smile. Stepping out gracefully, she positioned herself just in front of the car's hood and staged a delicate fall to her knees as the car screeched to a halt. Rising slowly, she looked up with wide, innocent eyes at the man in the driver's seat, feigning injury with a sweet accusation. Xu Yang claimed that he had just hit her with his car. The man, Bo Siyuan, raised an eyebrow and questioned her claim with a calm expression. Xu Yang responded by nodding and, without missing a beat, assured him she wasn't after compensation, only that he escort her into the club. She remarked playfully that she was being generous, leaning close to the car window with a charming, coquettish look. Bo Siyuan appeared unruffled by Xu Yang's theatrics, as he regarded her with a cold, assessing gaze. Without any apparent interest in her charms, he reached out, pressed a single finger against her forehead, and firmly pushed her back, showing no inclination to entertain her request further. Then, without so much as a backward glance, he closed the window and continued on his way to park the car. Xu Yang exhaled in slight frustration but remained undeterred when quickly spotted another vehicle arriving. The driver leaned out with a cheerful expression, calling out to her and mentioning that he'd heard she wanted to get into the nightlight club. He then offered to escort her inside. Casting him a lazy glance, she paused briefly before casually agreeing with a nod. Once she entered the club, Xu Yang's attention was drawn to the VIP 888 plaque by the door, which her system promptly confirmed as Fu Tingchuan's favored location for handling business. Surveying the area, her gaze soon landed on Fu Tingchuan, who stood beside a young woman that her system identified as his mistress. Observing the woman, Xiao Qi quietly pointed out that she was Bai Jianing, a college junior struggling financially to cover both her living expenses and her mother's medical bills. Xiao Qi noted that Bai Jianing's petite figure, pale skin, and sweetly innocent demeanor stirred a sense of protectiveness in onlookers, naturally drawing the attention of men. With a hint of mischief, Xiao Qi then suggested a plan, wondering aloud if Xu Yang intended to give Fu Tingchuan a scare. Xu Yang smirked and locked eyes with Fu Tingchuan from outside the room. He seemed startled at first, then quickly shifted to a narrowed glare, whispering harshly as he demanded to know why she was there. He warned her that whatever scene she intended to make, their divorce was inevitable. Xu Yang rolled her eyes, responding with a mix of sarcasm and amused exasperation. She assured him that she wasn't there to catch him in the act, dismissing his concerns by saying she was simply there to enjoy herself. With a smirk, she added that it would be best if he pretended not to know her this night, remarking that she'd hate for his young companion to become jealous. At that moment, Bai Jianing stepped forward, visibly uneasy, and addressed Fu Tingchuan hesitantly, asking who Xu Yang was. With a dark expression, Fu Tingchuan curtly reassured Bai Jianing not to worry about Xu Yang, instructing her to attend to her tasks and promising he'd join her shortly. Bai Jianing, appearing distressed, questioned if she had inadvertently caused any trouble, explaining that she had never intended to stir up any issues. In response, Fu Tingchuan reassured her gently, insisting that she hadn't done anything wrong and that no apology was necessary. Observing this exchange, Xu Yang raised an eyebrow and leaned in, suggesting pointedly that Bai Jianing's behavior wasn't exactly blameless, remarking with a smirk that flirting with a married man could indeed be considered problematic. This prompted an indignant response from Fu Tingchuan, who tersely insisted that she stop making baseless accusations, maintaining that Bai Jianing was not, in fact, a side chick, and asserting that they had done nothing improper. Xu Yang laughed in reply, sarcastically claiming to understand his reasoning, adding mockingly that if refraining from crossing the final line was his personal threshold, she would gladly follow his so-called rules. At that moment, her gaze fell upon the man from earlier, the one who had dismissed her attempt to get into the club. With a mischievous glint in her eye, Xu Yang murmured to herself that he might serve well for a little bit of payback. Just then, Xu Yang unexpectedly tapped Bo Siyuan's shoulder, startling him and triggering his reflexes into action. In an instant, he twisted her arm and flipped her onto the floor behind him. Xu Yang, wincing as she hit the ground, looked up at him in confusion, nursing her shoulder while he examined her from head to toe with a mix of disbelief and mild exasperation. As this unfolded, Fu Tingchuan's expression shifted from irritation to clear frustration as he observed the scene. Xu Yang, unfazed, smirked down at Bo Siyuan, demanding to know why he was grabbing people without warning. Bo Siyuan, however, calmly replied that she had struck first, to which Xu Yang pouted in response, insisting that since he had thrown her down, it was only fair he helped her up. Yet Bo Siyuan simply regarded her coolly, showing no interest in accommodating her request. In a moment of feigned distress, Xu Yang blinked rapidly, pretending to cry and accusing him of being a bully who first hit her with his car and was now intent on assaulting women. Her performance, devoid of real tears, bordered on comedic as she subtly observed the reactions of those nearby. Bo Siyuan was accustomed to women attempting to win his favor, but the theatrics displayed by Xu Yang were on a new level. With an amused half-smile, he extended his hand to help her off the ground, thinking that perhaps humoring her was worth the momentary amusement. Xu Yang, flashing a sweetly triumphant grin, grasped his hand, deliberately refusing to let go. To his surprise, she leaned in and planted a quick kiss on his chin, laughing playfully as she pulled back, teasing that it was her way of thanking him for being such a gentleman. In response, Bo Se-yeon narrowed his eyes, issuing a final warning that this was the last time he would indulge her antics, cautioning her not to waste her energy on him again. At that moment, Fu Tingchuan approached, irritation clear in his stride, and took Xu Yang firmly by the arm, his voice low and serious as he announced that she was coming with him. Xu Yang, however, quickly yanked her arm free, demanding to know why he assumed he had any right to direct her actions. Fu Tingchuan's face darkened further, and with a glance toward Bo Se-yeon, who watched the scene unfold with a smirk, he lowered his voice to a sharp murmur, suggesting that her antics wouldn't win him back. Xu Yang remained unfazed, casting a sly glance toward Bo Se-yeon, and responded that she had simply found him cute and very much her type. Anger flushed Fu Tingchuan's face, and he raised his hand as if to strike her, but Xu Yang stood her ground without flinching. Just as his hand was about to come down, Bo Se-yeon intervened, catching Fu Tingchuan's wrist firmly and pushing him back just enough to make him stumble. With an icy tone, Bo Se-yeon met his gaze, stating plainly that real men did not hit women. Embarrassed, Fu Tingchuan lowered his head, his anger momentarily restrained. Xu Yang gave an approving nod in agreement. However, Bo Se-yeon interrupted, turning his gaze on her and making it clear that, regardless of who Xu Yang was to them, he would not tolerate anyone crossing that line with him. Bo Se-yeon, maintaining his steely demeanor, released his hold on Fu Tingchuan and, with a frigid tone, told him to leave. Startled, Fu Tingchuan quickly murmured an apology, addressing Bo Se-yeon as he assured that he would be on his way immediately. Though he had intended to forcibly take Xu Yang with him, the chilling glare from Bo Se-yeon gave him pause. Begrudgingly, he withdrew his hand, leaving her with a cautionary remark that she'd better behave herself. After he left, Xu Yang turned her gaze toward Bo Se-yeon with a mischievous smile, suggesting he might give her a ride back. Bo Se-yeon responded with a smirk, his tone carrying a slight edge as he warned her that getting into his car wasn't without its hazards. He noted, half in jest and half as a genuine caution, that in this city, he was as much a target as he was feared, implying that a ride with him might be a one-way journey to a place of no return. Xu Yang only laughed in response, lifting her chin with a confident grin and insisting that she could protect him. Inside the car, as they drove through the city, the cool night air swept in through a slightly opened window, bringing a sense of calm. Xu Yang sat quietly, gazing out at the shimmering lights, her hair gently tousled by the breeze, while the faint scent of roses filled the confined space. Bo Se-yeon leaned in slightly, his gaze thoughtful, and asked in a lowered voice what perfume she was wearing. Xu Yang, a bit surprised, told him that she wasn't wearing any fragrance. Bo Se-yeon's expression turned guarded, darkening as he warned that if he found anything suspicious about that scent, she'd regret it. She met his gaze earnestly, reassuring him that she'd never hurt him and reminding him that she was there to protect him. Internally, Xu Yang reflected that the scent was simply a feature granted to her by the system, a gift, she thought wryly, that wasn't particularly seductive or useful. Bo Se-yeon chuckled, his tone almost mocking, as he remarked on her repeated talk of protecting him, wondering aloud if she really thought she could protect him or if she was trying to charm him. Xu Yang's playful glint didn't go unnoticed as he questioned, almost tauntingly, whether there was a problem, hinting that men should be able to handle such banter. However, before Bo Se-yeon could respond, the car's pace unexpectedly picked up, prompting him to raise his voice in query and ask Old Chen, the driver, what was going on. With a serious expression, Old Chen informed him that 3 cars were tailing them. Despite the escalating danger, Bo Se-yeon, remaining cool-headed, gave a calm instruction to Xu Yang, advising her to sit tight and hold onto the handle. The cars behind them intensified the chase, yet the 2 of them managed to shake off 2 of the 3, leaving only one remaining threat. At that moment, someone in the trailing car lowered their window, gun in hand, and fired 2 bullets that struck the body of the Maybach with loud, resonating bangs. Bo Se-yeon's tone stayed steady as he instructed Xu Yang to duck down and avoid the windows. Xu Yang complied, leaning close to Bo Se-yeon's leg, which drew a dry chuckle from Bo Se-yeon, who remarked on Xu Yang's persistent flotations even in such a perilous situation. Abruptly, System Assistant appeared, alerting Xu Yang of imminent danger. A knife was hurtling toward her window. Without hesitation, a flash of silver sped through the air, embedding itself into the car's window, inches from Xu Yang. Shocked, she immediately threw herself across the seat, shielding Bo Siyuan with her body. The action was met with a grim thud as the knife pierced flesh, sending a chill through both of them. Bo Siyuan murmured incredulously, questioning Xu Yang's sanity. Xu Yang, pale from pain and cold sweat forming on her forehead, replied resolutely that she had promised to protect Bo Siyuan. She glanced down at her shoulder, where the slim blade had lodged, staining her dress with a deep red. The knife's ominous black tint suggested the possibility of poison. In a hospital, Xu Yang questioned whether the knife that had wounded her was poisoned and, fearing the worst, asked if she was going to die. Bo Siyuan replied calmly, telling her they would have to wait for test results to know for sure. Despite her pain, Xu Yang's expression softened, her voice quivering as she declared that she was afraid of death. Bo Siyuan, speaking quietly, wondered aloud why Xu Yang would risk her life so boldly if she truly was afraid of dying. He pressed further, asking what Xu Yang wanted from him. Xu Yang met Bo Siyuan's gaze, replying with sincerity that she sought her love. She explained that, while her initial aim had been to make Fu Tingchuan regret his decisions, finding true love had become her greater desire. To her, Bo Siyuan was someone genuinely worthy of such a pursuit. With a raised eyebrow and an amused smirk, Bo Siyuan remarked that asking for money or property might be simpler. But Xu Yang's eyes sparkled with a focused resolve as she stated that she didn't want a penny, rather, she would prefer to be the one supporting Bo Siyuan. Incredulously, Bo Siyuan raised his brow even higher, teasing Xu Yang by asking if she intended to become his sugar mama. Xu Yang nodded with a serious expression, confirming his intentions, though she quickly clarified that Bo Siyuan would have to budget carefully, as she wasn't wealthy. Afterward, as he exited, a man approached Bo Siyuan and handed him a file containing information on Xu Yang's background. Intrigued, Bo Siyuan prompted him to explain more, asking who Xu Yang truly was. The man proceeded to describe Xu Yang's background, mentioning that she came from the Xu family, known for its turbulent dynamics. Her father, less than faithful, had largely sidelined Xu Yang, raising her primarily with an arranged marriage in mind. Currently, Xu Yang was married to Fu Tingchuan from one of the top 4 families, but the marriage had been troubled by Fu Tingchuan's infidelity, leading them toward divorce. The man chuckled as he finished, hinting that if word got out about Bo Siyuan, the famously reserved man, carrying Xu Yang into the hospital, it would surely leave a trail of broken hearts. Bo Siyuan, growing more serious, abruptly cut the conversation short, demanding if the results of the blood test had returned. Moments later, the report arrived, and his suspicions were confirmed. The knife that injured Xu Yang had indeed been poisoned. He learned that the poison was a newly developed, highly dangerous substance. In larger doses, it could be lethal, and even in small amounts, it carried an addictive risk. His expression became more intense as he immediately inquired about an antidote, only to have his doctor friend shake his head, explaining that none existed as far as he knew. From her hospital bed, Xu Yang overheard their conversation just as System Assistant reassured her that she needn't worry. Thanks to her natural rose fragrance, it promised, the toxins would eventually dissolve, albeit with a peculiar side effect, turning into a mild aphrodisiac. Xu Yang, feeling a surge of anxiety, muttered incredulously, half to herself, about her predicament, torn between the stab wound and the bizarre new concern. Sensing her agitation, Xiao Qi looked over, asking her what was wrong. Xu Yang, noticing an odd tingling spreading through her, simply responded, "Oh, it's starting." As she tried to walk, a steadying hand found its way around her waist, and Bo Siyuan's firm voice broke through her daze, instructing her to stay put since the poison was still affecting her. Noticing that Xu Yang was visibly struggling, Bo Siyuan asked her again if she felt all right. Xu Yang offered a weak smile and admitted she didn't feel well, with Bo Siyuan suggesting she might need a doctor. He began to help her back to the bed, but Xu Yang stopped him, saying there was no point in calling for a doctor as they couldn't solve the problem anyway. All she wanted, she said, was to go home and sleep. After a brief pause, Bo Se-Yuan reluctantly agreed and took her back to Beichen Apartments. Once there, Xu Yang's discomfort intensified, her body feeling as if it were on fire. Trying to maintain her composure, she thanked Bo Se-Yuan for bringing her home and attempted to dismiss him, saying she was fine now and that Bo Se-Yuan could go. Bo Se-Yuan's resolve only strengthened as Xu Yang's abrupt dismissal made him all the more curious. Observing her calmly, Se-Yuan remarked that he couldn't just leave, especially given that Xu Yang had been hurt on his behalf. He insisted on staying, offering to be there should anything happen, with a slight undertone of suspicion in his voice. Overwhelmed, Xu Yang made a swift decision and retreated to the kitchen, where she retrieved a small fruit knife before slipping away into the bathroom. There, she filled the bathtub with freezing cold water, immersing herself in an attempt to quell the heat surging through her body. The icy water sent a shiver down her spine, offering temporary relief, but as the chill faded, the heat returned, stronger and more unrelenting. Glancing toward the door, she noticed Bo Se-Yuan silently watching her from the doorway. In desperation, Xu Yang pressed the knife hard against her thigh, her teeth clenched. At that moment, Se-Yuan's voice cut through the tension, sharp and alarmed, as he snatched the knife from Xu Yang's grasp, asking if she had lost her mind. Stammering, Xu Yang explained her frustration, tearfully admitting that she didn't want to embarrass herself in front of Se-Yuan. Tears streaming down her cheeks, she allowed Se-Yuan to lift her from the tub and carry her gently to the bedroom, where she was placed tenderly on the bed. Se-Yuan reassured her, saying he would bring some water and a sedative to help her rest. Se-Yuan's grip relaxed as Xu Yang leaned close, softly holding onto his neck, and for a brief moment, Se-Yuan wondered if Xu Yang intended to kiss him, prepared for his true feelings to surface. But instead, Xu Yang softly caressed Se-Yuan's face and murmured that the poison was nothing to be trifled with. She was fortunate, Xu Yang added, to have a way to counteract it using rose essence, but if the poison had affected she more seriously, things might have turned out quite differently. Se-Yuan's expression shifted, his tone steady yet edged with caution, as he expressed his surprise. He said he didn't know whether Xu Yang had been persuaded by someone to act this way, if she was trying to play the martyr to get closer to him, or perhaps was even using him as a pawn in a personal rivalry with Fu Tingquanchuan. Regardless, Se-Yuan stated, he was willing to overlook it, given Xu Yang had sustained that injury for him. He reassured her that she wouldn't go through this ordeal alone, promising to arrange for a doctor to assist with her detox. With that, Se-Yuan turned to leave, and Xu Yang silently watched him go, vowing to herself that one day she would reach Se-Yuan's guarded heart. Just as Se-Yuan reached the front door and swung it open to depart, he nearly collided with someone entering. It was Fu Tingquan, who froze at the sight of him, his expression twisting with a mix of shock and anger. He demanded an explanation, his jealousy barely contained, remarking that this apartment had been part of Xu Yang's divorce settlement from him. Now, seeing her here with Se-Yuan, he could barely keep his frustration under control as he stormed into the bedroom, forcefully throwing the door open. Accusingly, he questioned Xu Yang, demanding to know what Se-Yuan was doing there. Xu Yang, unperturbed, broke free of his grasp, clarifying sharply that she was injured and that Se-Yuan had simply brought her home. She challenged him, asking what he thought had actually happened. Seeing her injury calmed Tingquan's anger slightly, though traces of jealousy still lingered. He remarked that a man and woman alone together would naturally raise suspicions, questioning if she understood the importance of maintaining appearances. Xu Yang, unfazed, retorted, suggesting he demonstrate what he meant. Right then, Fu Tingquan heard the sound of a woman crying from outside the door. It was Bai Jianing, sobbing as she explained that while she was waiting for him in the car, someone had knocked on the window. When she got out, that person dragged her away. Fu Tingquan's face went pale, and he immediately asked her who it was and if they had hurt her. Bai Jianing recounted that the person had hit her, accusing her of stealing Miss Xu's man. She also mentioned that he had been paid by someone to do it and warned her that if it happened again, he'd ruin her face. Furious, Fu Tingquan turned to Xu Yang, demanding to know if she was behind it. Xu Yang, however, scoffed at the scene unfolding in front of her. She sneered, sarcastically suggesting that if Bai Jianing was trying to manipulate her, those cheap tricks wouldn't work. With that, she slapped Bai Jianing across the face. Unperturbed, she strode out of the bedroom, unsurprised to find Se-Yuan still standing calmly in the living room. Walking up to him, she leaned in close and murmured that she had taken a hit on his behalf before, hinting that now he could return the favor. With a playful edge, Xu Yang proposed that Se-Yuan use his skills to check the security video and help her seek justice. She teased him, saying she'd stop bothering him if he did, though, if he preferred, she could stick around. Se-Yuan simply smirked, his expression one of mild amusement at her slyness. Without a word, he took out his phone and issued a command to someone on the other end, instructing them to locate someone for him. After about 30 minutes, two men in black entered the room, dragging in a skinny, shifty-looking man. The men informed Se-Yuan that they had found the suspect and restored the security footage. Leaning back on the sofa with his legs stretched out and a cigarette in hand, Se-Yuan maintained an air of calm indifference, directing them to play the footage. On the screen, a scene from the garage began to unfold, showing the skinny man slapping Bai Jianing hard across the face. She recoiled, shrieking in pain and cursing, demanding that he ease up. The man retorted, muttering that she'd told him to make it look realistic. Bai Jianing, grimacing in pain, hurriedly instructed him to take the money and leave before anyone else saw them. Tingchuan, watching the footage, was stunned. The image of Bai Jianing as the sweet, delicate girl he had known shattered as he took in her crude and foul-mouthed demeanor in the video. He turned to her, his expression showing deep betrayal. Meanwhile, Bai Jianing clutched her swollen cheek, vehemently screaming that the footage was fake, insisting it was edited and that it wasn't her in the video. As one of Se-Yuan's men approached, he forcefully kicked the skinny man, who crumpled onto the floor before Se-Yuan's sofa. The man sobbed, pleading desperately, apologizing profusely. He stammered that he would never have dared to harm Ms. Xu if he had known she was a friend of Se-Yuan's, begging for mercy. At last, realization struck the man, and he turned toward Fu Tingchuan, urging him to see the truth about Bai Jianing. With desperation in his eyes, he implored Tingchuan to believe him, claiming that he was only a pawn in Bai Jianing's game and was innocent of any wrongdoing. Fu Tingchuan's face twisted in disdain as the betrayal sank in, leaving no room for doubt about Bai Jianing's deceitful character. Finally seeing her true nature, he declared that she was nothing more than a vile, duplicitous woman, berating himself for having been fooled by her act. With that, he kicked her away in disgust, ordering her to leave. Xu Yang then turned to Bo Se-Yuan, quietly asking if he could have everyone removed from the room. In response, Se-Yuan raised his hand, signaling to his men, who promptly escorted Bai Jianing out, despite her futile attempts to resist. Once the room was cleared, only Xu Yang and Bo Se-Yuan remained. Xu Yang, still groggy from a sedative, leaned softly against Se-Yuan's shoulder. Her voice, tired and barely above a whisper, asked if he could let her rest on him just until she fell asleep, assuring him that after that night, they would part ways for good. As she slipped into a deep, unburdened sleep, time passed until she awoke to the flicker of neon lights casting an ethereal glow across the room. She called for Xiao Qi, her quick travel assistant, to inquire how long she had slept. Xiao Qi's playful robotic tone informed her that nearly 24 hours had passed, cheerfully assuring her that she was fully recharged and ready to proceed. Just then, a knock on the door interrupted the quiet. When Xu Yang answered, she was met by a woman in a lab coat, who introduced herself as the personal doctor Mr. Se-Yuan had arranged for her. The doctor explained that she needed to take a blood sample to check for any toxins that might be present in her system. Xu Yang shook her head and dismissed the doctor's offer, stating that she felt perfectly fine and believed any toxins were no longer a concern. She insisted that drawing blood would only complicate matters. After sending the doctor away, she proceeded toward the garage, intending to head out for a meal. However, just as she was about to leave, her phone rang. Answering the call, she asked who was on the line. Bo Se-Yuan's familiar, magnetic voice came through, tinged with mild irritation as he questioned why she had refused the checkup. In a firm tone, Xu Yang explained that, as she had promised not to involve him further, she saw no reason to accept assistance from someone he had arranged. A pause followed, and Bo Se-Yuan finally replied with a cold, "As you wish," before abruptly hanging up. Later, Xu Yang called out to her digital assistant, Xiao Qi, asking for Bo Se-Yuan's current location. Xiao Qi swiftly tapped into the big data network and reported that Bo Siyuan was having dinner at the Four Seasons Hotel with Mu Yuyu, the eldest daughter of the influential Mu family. As Xiao Qi explained, Bo Siyuan, an illegitimate child of Jiang City's wealthiest man, had endured a difficult childhood, and Mu Yuyu had once helped him during a low point in his life, cementing him as an ally. Given the ongoing plans for a marriage alliance between their families, Xiao Qi noted that Mu Yuyu could almost be considered Bo Siyuan's fiancé. At this, Xu Yang interjected, correcting Xiao Qi's description. She scoffed, pointing out that calling Mu Yuyu a fiancé was a stretch, as they weren't even engaged. Xiao Qi, slightly miffed, asked for a more accurate term, and Xu Yang suggested casual friend instead. Upon Xu Yang's arrival at the Four Seasons Hotel, she immediately spotted Bo Siyuan seated with his back facing Xu Yang, while Mu Yuyu sat across, composed and elegantly made up. Xu Yang approached them with a friendly greeting, calling out to Bo Siyuan with a cheerful, "Hey, Bo Siyuan." When Bo Siyuan turned around, he was taken aback to see Xu Yang standing there. Wasting no time, Xu Yang reached into her purse and pulled out a thick stack of pink bills, setting it decisively on the table in front of Bo Siyuan. In a tone laced with amusement, Bo Siyuan raised an eyebrow and questioned whether Xu Yang was attempting to bribe him. Xu Yang, with a mischievous glint in her eye, reminded Bo Siyuan that she had promised to take care of him and encouraged him to accept the cash as meal money. Bo Siyuan smirked, clearly entertained, and remarked on Xu Yang's generosity. In response, Xu Yang assured him that he should inform her next time he had plans for dinner, as Xu Yang would ensure he was well provided for, playfully adding that she wouldn't want him to run out of cash. Observing the interaction, Mu Yuyu, who had remained silent until then, tightened her hands beneath the table but kept a polite smile. She finally turned to Bo Siyuan and asked, in a composed manner, about the identity of her guest. Xu Yang, leaning in close to Bo Siyuan's ear, whispered playfully that she was his secret sponsor, even going so far as to blow a gentle breath near Bo Siyuan's ear before stepping back with a confident smile and leaving the restaurant with a noticeable spring in her step. Outside, Xu Yang felt invigorated as she strolled along the stone path by the hotel entrance. Her mood was quickly dampened, however, as it began to rain, soaking her through within minutes. As she stood there, Bo Siyuan approached with an umbrella in hand, his voice cold as he asked why Xu Yang was letting herself get drenched in the rain. Xu Yang, her eyes wide and innocent, blinked up at Bo Siyuan with raindrops clinging to her lashes, giving her the appearance of a mischievous doll. She explained that she had wanted to see if Bo Siyuan would care enough to come after her. Teasingly, she reminded Bo Siyuan that it had been Bo Siyuan who had promised to stop meddling in her life, emphasizing that she was not the one following Bo Siyuan around. Bo Siyuan barely allowed a hint of a smile to surface as he coolly reminded Xu Yang that it had been she who came over, so the blame couldn't be shifted onto him. Shifting into a more serious tone, Bo Siyuan added that Xu Yang was still in recovery, warning her that her wound could reopen if she continued acting recklessly. With a decisive tone, he informed Xu Yang that he was taking her to the hospital. From her vantage point in the nearby car, Mu Yuyu watched the exchange with a strained smile, turning toward Bo Siyuan and questioning if he truly intended to let Xu Yang join them in the vehicle. Bo Siyuan dismissed Mu Yoyo's concerns with little more than a glance, instructing her to take a different car. Though Mu Yuyu masked her discontent, she couldn't suppress the thought that Bo Siyuan appeared to be monopolizing Xu Yang's attention, a situation she inwardly vowed not to let slide. Once inside the car, Xu Yang shivered slightly, her nose tinged red from the chill, and she asked if the air conditioning could be turned down, remarking that she hadn't felt this cold even while standing in the rain. Bo Siyuan, rolling his eyes, instructed the driver to switch off the AC. Then, without further comment, he reached into the glove compartment and handed Xu Yang a fresh white shirt, instructing her to change out of her wet clothes. Xu Yang, with a surprised expression, hesitated and questioned if she should change right there in the car with Bo Siyuan present. Bo Siyuan, remaining unfazed, assured her that he wouldn't be watching and proceeded to raise a privacy divider between the front and back seats. Shortly after, Xu Yang announced that she was dressed. Bo Siyuan turned to face her, taking in Xu Yang's appearance in the oversized shirt, which hung loosely and reached down to her mid-thigh, resembling a casual dress. With a playful glint in her eye, Xu Yang teasingly asked why Bo Siyuan was so unbothered by her partial state of undress, adding an amused question as to whether Bo Siyuan ever felt any sort of interest in such situations. Bo Siyuan, undeterred, replied in a cool tone, clarifying that he wasn't interested in married women and cautioning Xu Yang not to test his limits. Xu Yang responded with a playful laugh and a mischievous smile, jokingly warning Bo Siyuan about the risks of jinxing herself. Leaning in closer, she lightly trailed her finger down Bo Siyuan's chest, remarking with a grin that he seemed a bit tense. Bo Siyuan's gaze sharpened as his eyes narrowed, a warning flickering within them as he firmly cautioned Xu Yang, hinting that any more provocations might just lead to her being thrown out of the car. Unfazed, Xu Yang met his intensity with a playful retort, asking if that was meant to be a threat or perhaps even a promise. In next second, Xu Yang suddenly looped her arms around Bo Siyuan's neck, pulling him close enough to plant a daring kiss on his soft lips. Bo Siyuan instinctively began to push her away, but Xu Yang bit down on his lower lip, whispering provocatively that if Bo Siyuan was resisting at this moment, then perhaps he didn't deserve his title as a real man. This challenge triggered a spark in Bo Siyuan, igniting a flame he had barely managed to keep under control until now. His hand moved to the back of Xu Yang's head, pulling her into an intense, consuming kiss that defied the rules, channeling nothing but raw, unrestrained desire as he captured each playful, gasping breath from Xu Yang. Between breaths, Xu Yang's flushed face surfaced, and she whispered, urging Bo Siyuan to slow down, her elbow pressed against Bo Siyuan's chest in a gentle attempt to create distance. Bo Siyuan's gaze remained fixed on Xu Yang's lips, now swollen from the fervent kiss, his voice simmering with dark intensity as he stated firmly that he needed no one's validation for his masculinity. Just then, the driver called back, announcing that they had arrived at the hospital, breaking the tension of the moment. A short while later, Xu Yang found herself waiting alone in the VIP lounge of the hospital. After nearly half an hour, Bo Siyuan entered, striding confidently into the room with a report in hand and an unwavering gaze directed at Xu Yang. Sensing a slight twinge of nervousness, Xu Yang maintained her composure, lifting her chin as she returned Bo Siyuan's piercing stare, her expression defiant. She challenged Bo Siyuan's suspicions, implying that he had nothing to be worried about. Teasingly, she added that this kind of poison couldn't be fully neutralized without a specific antidote, which couldn't possibly happen overnight. With a smirk, she drew out her words, suggesting that Bo Siyuan likely suspected her of orchestrating the entire incident, staging an assassination attempt only to intercept the danger herself in a bid to gain Bo Siyuan's trust. Bo Siyuan's lips pressed into a tight line as he acknowledged that he hadn't ruled out such a possibility. Xu Yang shrugged dismissively, remarking that Bo Siyuan could think whatever he wanted, but he would eventually realize Xu Yang's innocence. Without another word, she strode away, head held high as if unaffected by the encounter. Not long after Xu Yang's departure, one of Bo Siyuan's subordinates entered the room with a report. He informed Bo Siyuan that they had identified the individual responsible for the recent shooting. Narrowing her eyes thoughtfully, Bo Siyuan mused about a plot of land in East City they had acquired 6 months prior, a property over which the Lee family and a syndicate from Kiev had fiercely competed until Bo Siyuan's team claimed it. Recognizing the Lee family's notorious ties to the underworld, Bo Siyuan hinted that perhaps it was time to respond to their hostility in kind. His tone grew icy as he declared that their attempt on his life warranted more than just a straightforward reprisal. Living with prolonged suffering, he suggested, would be far worse than a swift death. His words carried a chilling conviction that left his subordinate silent and serious as he nodded, confirming he would make the necessary arrangements. After a pause, Bo Siyuan then ordered him to assign someone to keep an eye on Xu Yang, admitting that perhaps he had misjudged her. Meanwhile, Xu Yang, after a few days of recovery, had returned to her routines and rented a modest flower shop as a fresh start. That evening, she let the young assistant she'd recently hired go home early, choosing to stay back and close the shop herself. She turned off the lights and was preparing to leave when, suddenly, a man barged into the darkened space, brandishing a long knife. He barked a command for her to raise her hands. In an attempt to de-escalate the situation, Xu Yang calmly raised her hands, offering the shop's keys and the cash from the register. However, the man pressed the knife against her back, steering her out of the shop. it quickly became clear that his intentions went beyond a simple robbery. As she was forced out, she wondered if Bai Jianing or perhaps Mu Yuyu might be behind this confrontation, seeking revenge. Simultaneously, Bo Siyuan received an urgent phone call. His expression darkened as he hissed a demand, asking why his order to monitor Xu Yang had not been followed. The voice on the other end of the line stammered, explaining that they had indeed been keeping a close eye on Miss Xu, but that Bo Siyuan's directive had been to refrain from intervening directly. However, Bo Siyuan's tone sharpened immediately, demanding the kidnapper's location and cutting off the call without waiting for further excuses. Rising to leave with fierce determination, he left his companions behind in the VIP room. Watching from nearby, Mu Yuyu clenched her fists tightly as Bo Siyuan stormed out. Around her, murmurs spread among the group, with some speculating about the urgency of Bo Siyuan's departure and hinting at the possibility that his sudden departure was for a woman he held in particular regard. Someone in the group commented that whoever this person was must be extraordinary to compel Bo Siyuan to drop everything. The remarks heightened the group's curiosity, while Mu Yuyu, growing increasingly tense, slipped outside to make a discreet phone call. In a hushed tone, she demanded an update on the situation. The voice on the line responded nonchalantly, reassuring her that they had Xu Yang in their custody and that the plan would proceed once they reached their intended location. The caller's indifference irritated Mu Yuyu, and she ordered him to expedite the process, reminding him sharply of her payment and insisting on haste. Meanwhile, the kidnapper had driven Xu Yang to a secluded alley. He glanced back to find her sitting silently in the van's back seat, her calmness contrasting with the intensity of the situation. Mu Yuyu hinted that people were already tracking them and would find them before they even reached their destination. She suggested he find a place to finish her off. Hearing Mu Yoyo's agitated voice on the phone pressuring him to act immediately, the kidnapper complied, pulling over at an abandoned repair shop. Once they arrived, he forcefully pulled Xu Yang out of the van, paying no attention to her unusual behavior. After removing her gag, he leaned in close with a mocking grin, clearly entertained by her evident distress. He told her she could scream if she wanted, adding derisively that she should make it entertaining for him, as if he took pleasure in the dark tension of the situation. As Mu Yuyu arrived, she nervously scanned the abandoned surroundings and, with an irritated edge, asked Fang Qi what was going on and why he had summoned her there. Fang Qi, caught off guard, looked at her in bewilderment, asserting that he hadn't requested her presence and questioning why she had come. A calm voice interrupted them. Xu Yang, who was now sitting up on the dusty floor, smiled serenely and revealed that she was the one who had invited Mu Yuyu to the location. It turns out that half an hour earlier, despite being restrained, she had managed to overhear Fang Qi's conversation on the phone. Seizing the opportunity, she used her system assistant, Xiao Qi, to hack his phone, crafting a fake message to lure Mu Yuyu there and blocking her from verifying the information. With a relaxed demeanor and an amused expression, Xu Yang looked at Mu Yuyu and suggested that she must be curious as to why Yuyu, a pampered heiress, had just happened to rescue Bo Siyuan in the slums when he was in dire need. Xu Yang then tilted her head, smiling smugly, and insinuated that Mu Yuyu had likely been aware of the Bo Siyuan family's search for their lost child and had orchestrated the whole heroic rescue scenario. Mu Yuyu admitted to manipulating events, taunting Xu Yang about what she could possibly do in response. Later, in a fit of frustration, Mu Yuyu tore off her mask and cast it aside, shouting for Fang Qi to put an end to Xu Yang immediately. She promised him 5 times the original amount, a substantial 10 million, if he would act swiftly. The greed in Fang Qi's eyes intensified as he picked up a long knife and approached Xu Yang with a menacing grin. He mocked her, suggesting she blame fate rather than him for her misfortune, then raised the knife, poised to strike directly at her chest. In that instant, a gunshot shattered the tense silence. The bullet tore through Fang Qi's arm, forcing him to release the knife, which fell to the ground with a clatter, stirring up a thick cloud of dust around them. Fang Qi, visibly shaken, turned toward the doorway, where a group of men in black had just entered, led by a tall, imposing figure with a frigid expression. This man, with sharp, penetrating eyes, immediately issued a terse command to rescue Xu Yang at once and apprehend them. Mu Yuyu stood frozen, stunned by the swift arrival of Bo Siyuan, realizing with rising panic that her meticulous anti-tracking measures had failed. She was about to step forward to explain, but Bo Siyuan cast her a disdainful look, dismissing her efforts as insignificant. His gaze then softened as he approached Xu Yang, who was still bound to a chair. With a calm, reassuring tone, he told her it was over and produced a Swiss Army knife, slicing through her restraints. Xu Yang exhaled in irritation, remarking on the excessively tight bindings. With a quiet resolve, Bo Siyuan asked her how she would prefer him to handle Mu Yuyu. Xu Yang, her tone laced with sarcasm, told him he could deal with her as he pleased, subtly reminding him of his childhood connection to Mu Yuyu and teasing that he might feel remorse if he were too harsh. Bo Siyuan then instructed his team to escort Mu Yuyu to the police station, indicating that she had much to account for. Overcome by fear, Mu Yuyu protested, reminding Bo Siyuan of their past and his promise to repay her for a favor she had done in their childhood. She implored him to honor his word. Bo Siyuan's retort was swift and cutting, pointing out that he had heard Mu Yuyu admit to the entire kidnapping scheme against him when he was young, not a favor. He asserted that Mu Yuyu alone had orchestrated the plot. Growing desperate, Mu Yuyu tried to claim that her words had been manipulated by Xu Yang and were merely part of a setup. Xu Yang, eyebrows raised and a hint of mockery in her voice, sarcastically recounted how Mu Yuyu would likely claim that Xu Yang had been the one who led her into the slums as a child and that she had even arranged Bo Siyuan's kidnapping. Her biting tone emphasized her disbelief as she mocked Miss Perfect Mu, who, in everyone's mind, had never done anything wrong. Bo Siyuan looked on in disgust, giving a brief signal to the men in black, who promptly dragged Mu Yuyu away while her desperate protests echoed throughout the deserted repair shop. Reflecting on his past, Bo Siyuan thought bitterly about how, in his youth, each act of kindness had meant the world to him, leaving him longing to repay it. Yet, he now realized that those cherished memories had been nothing more than illusions. Xu Yang, her voice soft with a note of wistful warmth, imagined aloud how he might feel if he had someone who genuinely cared for him, someone whose love could ease his heart. She wondered aloud, confessing that if she'd met him earlier, she would have stayed by his side, ensuring he never felt so alone. Reaching up, she gently brushed her hand across his cool cheek, her words painting a picture of companionship. She envisioned herself standing with him through all his hardships, sharing what little they had, tending to his wounds after fights, and telling jokes to lift his spirits whenever he felt down. Moved, Bo Siyuan's gaze softened, his eyes shining with emotion as he apologized for not appearing in her life sooner. In response, she raised her head to place a gentle kiss on his jaw, reassuring him that even if she had known him as that lonely, rebellious boy, her feelings would have been the same. She would still choose to stay by his side, forever. He wrapped his hand around her waist, pulling her close and pressing his lips to hers. As Bo Siyuan held her tightly, Xu Yang's mind went blank. Clutching his shirt, she mumbled a faint protest, mentioning her discomfort and hinting that her leg was hurting. With a teasing smile, Bo Siyuan playfully bit her lip and questioned her, curious about Fu Tingchuan's treatment of her, wondering aloud if he had always been this gentle with her. Xu Yang, momentarily dazed and her lips slightly swollen, finally grasped the meaning behind his question, softly asking if he was genuinely jealous of Fu Tingchuan. In response, she smoothed down her rumpled collar, a small smile tugging at her lips, and hinted that although she'd been married to Fu Tingchuan for a year, nothing intimate had occurred between them. Bo Siyuan merely gave a quiet scoff, assuring her that what had transpired between her and Fu Tingchuan didn't concern him. Finally, draping his jacket over her shoulders, he offered to take her home. Bo Siyuan accompanied Xu Yang back to her apartment, but as she reached to unlock the door, it unexpectedly opened, revealing a man waiting inside. Shocked, Xu Yang demanded to know what he was doing there. Fu Tingchuan responded with a calm confidence, reminding her that he was her husband and thus had every right to be there. He placed a hand on her waist, a silent but firm assertion of his place beside her. Turning to Bo Siyuan, Fu Tingchuan thanked him for bringing Xu Yang home, though his tone carried a subtle warning. Xu Yang, without pulling away, gave Bo Siyuan a slight, amused smile. Bo Siyuan, however, couldn't help but notice Fu Tingchuan's possessive gesture and responded with a quick, icy glance. Xu Yang continued to needle Bo Siyuan, playfully reminding him of his earlier statement about assuring him that it didn't concern him, insinuating that perhaps Bo Siyuan's indifference wasn't quite so genuine. Without waiting for any reply, she shut the door, dismissing Bo Siyuan without a second thought. Outside, Bo Siyuan shook his head with a faint smirk, muttering to himself that Xu Yang was merely trying to provoke him. Inside the apartment, Fu Tingchuan turned to Xu Yang, visibly irritated as he questioned why she had stayed out so late. But Xu Yang, unfazed, gave him a cold look before settling herself on the couch. She informed him flatly that her activities were none of his business and warned him that she would be changing the lock soon, urging him to leave. Fu Tingchuan's voice softened slightly as he continued, confessing that the evening had given him ample time to reflect. He admitted that he had previously thought he understood her completely, only to realize that his assumptions had been mistaken. With a knowing smile, Xu Yang accused him of never truly seeing her for who she was, not even during the times when she went to great lengths to make him happy, attending to every detail of his life. She revealed, with a hint of sorrow, that he had never acknowledged the depth of her love, despite how much he had taken her devotion for granted. Reflecting on her past dedication to their relationship, Xu Yang felt a pang of sorrow, realizing that her efforts had gone unnoticed by Fu Tingchuan. At that moment, Fu Tingchuan stepped forward, taking her hand with an expression of regret mingled with emotion. He admitted to his past mistakes, confessing that he had failed to treat her as she deserved, and asked if they could start anew. Xu Yang, however, shook her head, dismissing his proposal. She told him it was too late, remarking that she couldn't simply be discarded and reclaimed at his whim. She explained that her current self was only there to find peace for the person she once was, to finally let her move on. Even though he regretted it now, she made it clear that her former self wouldn't be returning. Fu Tingchuan's heart raced, filled with emotions he hadn't experienced since his youth, as he tightened his grip on her hand. He insisted that it wasn't too late, pointing out that they were technically still married as they hadn't signed the divorce papers. With renewed hope, he suggested they try dating and get to know each other genuinely. After some contemplation, Xu Yang agreed, seeing it as a way to complete a chapter that hadn't yet been closed. The following day, they met for dinner at a popular restaurant. While waiting for their meal, Xu Yang smirked and sent a playful message to her friend, Bo Siyuan, hinting that she was having dinner with Fu Tingchuan at Lover's Bistro. She suggested, in a teasing tone, that Bo Siyuan might want to stop by. After a lengthy pause, Bo Siyuan replied with a short but pointed response, saying Xu Yang was being petty. Xu Yang laughed out loud, finding his response both accurate and amusing, sensing that he understood her intentions perfectly. After dinner, as they strolled outside, she glanced around, noting that Bo Siyuan hadn't shown up. She realized with a smirk that he had decided not to take the bait. As they continued walking, Fu Tingchuan observed Xu Yang's flushed cheeks and warm smile, his expression softening. He offered to assist her when she swayed slightly, but Xu Yang quickly dismissed him with a playful yet stern warning, insisting he keep his hands to himself. Tipsy and with unsteady steps, Xu Yang eventually lost her balance and stumbled into his arms. Fu Tingchuan didn't hesitate, pulling her closer and quietly urging her to stop resisting. Held securely in his embrace, Xu Yang looked picture-perfect to Fu Tingchuan. Her cheeks were flushed, her long lashes curled beautifully, and her gaze softened by the effects of the wine. He watched her with a new intensity, feeling his heart pound in a way it hadn't in years. At that moment, Bo Siyuan approached briskly, noting Xu Yang nestled comfortably in Fu Tingchuan's arms. Raising an eyebrow, he questioned Fu Tingchuan with a hint of amusement, wondering if Fu Tingchuan intended to take her home or simply indulge in a bit of public affection. Flustered yet defiant, Fu Tingchuan held Xu Yang even closer, retorting that even if he were to kiss her right there, it wouldn't be considered taking advantage. After all, it would simply be a moment between husband and wife. Bo Siyuan, however, met his gaze coolly and asked him pointedly whether he had ever truly respected Xu Yang's wishes. Meanwhile, Xu Yang began to wake, feeling unexpectedly alert after her brief doze. She opened her eyes to find Fu Tingchuan and Bo Siyuan engaged in what seemed like a tense standoff. Fu Tingchuan softened his tone upon noticing her awake, suggesting they head home and offering to help her. Although Xu Yang attempted to pull away from his grasp, Fu Tingchuan maintained a firm hold on her wrist, asserting that he would be the one to take her home. Xu Yang scrunched up her face in annoyance, muttering that she didn't need Fu Tingchuan's help. She added, under her breath, that Siluan was right, she had drunk too much to be out alone this evening. Yet, Fu Tingchuan seemed unwilling to let go, tightening his grip as though he feared she might slip away if he loosened his hold. With an exasperated tone, Fu Tingchuan insisted that since he had brought her out for dinner, it was only right for him to see her home safely. His grip, however, prompted a small wince from Xu Yang as she softly protested, telling him to ease up and mentioning the bruises she still had from the previous day, not wanting any fresh ones. At that moment, Bo Siyuan intervened, stepping forward and landing a punch square on Fu Tingchuan's shoulder, which sent him stumbling back and releasing Xu Yang's hand. With a furious glare, Fu Tingchuan demanded why Siyuan was interfering, asserting that he was merely talking to his wife. But Siyuan met his gaze icily, retorting that he should notice she was in pain. Ignoring Fu Tingchuan's irritation, Siyuan gently took Xu Yang's hand and suggested they head to the car, where he had some medicine. Although Fu Tingchuan appeared as if he might follow them, he hesitated, likely deterred by the possibility of another punch from Siyuan. So he watched as Siyuan led Xu Yang toward the car. Once inside, Siyuan carefully applied a cool ointment to the bruises on her wrist. Though she flinched at the sting, Xu Yang let out a small breath and muttered about the discomfort. Siyuan, wearing a teasing smirk, questioned whether she was really that fragile. Xu Yang playfully removed her high heels and rested her leg on Siyuan's knee, pointing out that she had bruises on her ankle as well and pouting for a little care on that side too. With an eye roll, Siyuan dabbed more ointment on her ankle. As Bo Siyuan continued to apply ointment to her bruises, Xu Yang shifted slightly, accidentally grazing him in a way that made her eyes widen in surprise. She quickly froze, blushing deeply, and Siyuan, taken aback, muttered that it had been totally unintentional. Tossing the ointment tube back to her, he suggested she could finish up herself, though his gaze lingered a bit longer than usual. Xu Yang thanked him with an embarrassed mutter before awkwardly bending down to take care of her own ankle. In her sultry black dress, she looked more vulnerable yet alluring than ever. The sheer fabric of Xu Yang's dress hinted at her neckline, and as she leaned forward, a subtle curve became visible, catching Siyuan's eye and making a flash of heat appear in his gaze. When Xu Yang handed the ointment back, she noticed an unusual expression on his face and raised an eyebrow, asking him what was going on. Bo Siyuan quickly replied that it was nothing and turned to look out the car window, his face unreadable. Xu Yang shrugged and settled back into her seat, drifting off to sleep, only to slide sideways and end up resting her head on Siyuan's leg. Bo Siyuan's tall frame stiffened slightly, and he gave her a gentle nudge, telling her to wake up. Xu Yang, still groggy, sat up and rubbed her eyes, apologizing as she asked if she had bumped into him. Siyuan replied with a rough edge in his voice, saying that she hadn't, though his expression suggested he had more to say. Noticing his look, Xu Yang stammered out a protest, insisting that she hadn't meant anything by it. Siyuan, with a playful smirk, challenged her, suggesting that maybe she had done all this just to get close to him. Xu Yang flushed, denying his implication and insisting that he was reading too much into the situation. But Siyuan questioned her further, asking why she had sent him the restaurant's address if that were the case. With a sigh, Xu Yang admitted that she only wanted to see if he would actually show up. Bo Siyuan leaned in, his gaze filled with intensity as he continued to press Xu Yang, asking her what it meant now that he had shown up. Xu Yang responded with a soft smile, suggesting that it simply proved he was interested in her. Her response seemed to deepen the look in Siyuan's eyes, and he allowed his gaze to linger on her lips, the intensity apparent. Seeing his expression, Xu Yang instinctively leaned back, a bit unsettled, and asked him what he was looking at. Siyuan replied, almost in a whisper, that he was simply looking at her. Before she could respond, he slipped an arm around her waist, drawing her close, and told her that her playful teasing had led them to this moment, hinting that this was the natural outcome of the tension between them.